Hello students, welcome back to our lesson on degrees of comparison. We'll now look at some of the exercises that we could do using the theory of degrees of comparison. This is just a list of some of the commonly used adjectives written in their three forms of comparison: the positive, the comparative, and the superlative. You can look at the word wise, for example. A single syllabled adjective like wise in the positive becomes wiser as a comparative and wisest as a superlative. You will notice some of the irregular words like good, for example. Good becomes better as a comparative and best as a superlative. This is a good book. This book is better than that one, and this is the best book. Similarly, adjectives that have more than two syllables, difficult, will become more difficult and most difficult. I would advise you to think of more adjectives and adverbs and prepare a list like this for yourself, a table listing the positive, comparative, and superlative degrees of as many number of adjectives and adverbs that you can think of. A clear understanding of the degrees of comparison will be of great use to you in adding to your communication skills. The more knowledge you have regarding these, the better will you be able to use it in your conversation so as to sound more natural and more at ease when you converse. And the best way to acquire knowledge in anything naturally is by doing or engaging with it more and more, and doing exercises in the degrees of comparison will definitely be a step in that direction. One of the basic steps that you can take is to look for the degrees of comparison that you find used in somebody's speech that you might hear on television, for example, or when you read the newspaper or any book. Look at the way they have used the adjectives and the sense that they convey. So I've just given you an example here. Look at these three sentences. I have underlined the adjectives used in each sentence. You can have a sentence like Russia is a large country. Look for the adjective. Country is the noun which is being qualified by the adjective large, and you find that it is in its basic or simple form. So the first sentence there is a sentence in the positive degree. The second one, where you have two units being compared, China is being compared with Russia, and you say that Russia is larger than China. So with the addition of the suffix er, larger now becomes rewritten in the comparative degree. So Russia is larger than China. So the comparative degree is used when we have to compare two entities. And when it comes to more than two, when you're talking about a large group, we use the superlative degree of comparison. Large, larger, largest. With the addition of est, large becomes the superlative form, largest. Russia is the largest country in the world. So look for these sentences, look for the sentences in newspapers and sentences that you hear on television or anywhere, and identify, make it a habit to identify the degrees of comparison. Another useful exercise is to frame sentences of your own. You can choose any adjective as I have listed here, and frame sentences using the different degrees of that adjective. Let us look at the word fine, for example. I may frame a sentence like silk is a fine fabric. I have used the positive degree of fine. Now when I want to write a sentence using the comparative degree, I know that the word that I have to use is finer. Fine plus er becomes finer. So how do I frame a sentence? I can either say silk is finer than cotton. That is one way of, one sentence. Or I can think of a different sentence altogether. we are in a finer state than most other countries, something like that. So I have framed two sentences using the comparative degree of the adjective fine, fine and finer. Now, when we frame a sentence using the superlative degree, we know that fine must become finest, fine, finer, finest. Finest is the superlative degree. So I can frame the sentence in this way. Silk is the finest fabric. I have used the superlative degree because I'm talking about a whole lot of fabrics, and silk, I think, is the finest fabric, or this is the finest movie I have ever watched. So, two sentences which have used the superlative degree of the adjective fine. So go ahead, frame sentences with each one of these and use as many different categories as possible. Clear and fine are, of course, single syllabled adjectives, that is, adjectives that have only one vowel sound. We remember that as the number of vowel sounds increase, or as the number of syllables increase, the adjectives take on different, you cannot form the superlative and the comparative degrees with the addition of er or est. So beautiful will become more beautiful and most beautiful. In addition, you have the irregular words like good, bad, and so on. Good does not become gooder. Good is better and best. This is a good book, this is a better book, that is the best book. Bad, similarly, takes forms like bad, worse, and worst. Bad, worse, W-O-R-S-E and W-O-R-S-T. Like good, well is another word which takes better and best as its comparative and superlative degrees. Most of these words are given in the earlier list. Another exercise, and probably the most challenging among the exercises, would be to rewrite sentences using the different degrees of comparison without changing the meaning. So, suppose you come across a sentence that goes, the elephant is the largest animal on land. Largest is the adjective that describes the noun animal. We realize that it is in the superlative degree because you have large plus est, largest. It is in the superlative degree. Now the same sentence can be rewritten using the comparative form, which would be larger. We know that larger is the comparative form of the adjective large. So how do we frame the sentence? We write the word larger and then frame the sentence in accordance with that. What is the sense that is conveyed? That the elephant is the largest animal. So how do we put it in, the elephant on one side and the other animals on the other side, so that we can use the comparative degree. So the elephant is larger than other animals on land. It is the same meaning that is conveyed, but I have used a different degree of comparison. Now, the same sentence can be rewritten with using the positive degree of comparison. Again, use the word large, which is the simple form of the adjective. So, write that down and then frame the sentence in accordance with that, and it will naturally be a sentence that has, it will be a negative sentence like this, a sentence which has a negative construct. No animals on land are as large as the elephant. So superlative is the biggest, and from that you come down to the smallest. You're now talking about the other animals. No animals on land are as large as the elephant. The elephant is still being compared to the other animals, but you have used it in the positive degree. Please keep trying to frame sentences. I'll be giving this to you as an exercise soon. Look at another set. Here you have only two things that are being compared to each other, oil and water. So you can only write it in either the positive degree or the comparative degree. You cannot bring in the superlative degree here for the simple reason that there are only two things being compared here. So oil is denser than water. Denser is the adjective, and when it is rewritten using the positive degree, you can say oil is not as dense as water. Water is not as dense as oil. So here are a few adjectives for you to work on. You need to frame sentences using the different degrees of comparison using the following adjectives. I have listed 5 adjectives there for you. So ultimately you will be submitting an assignment with 15 sentences, each adjective written in 3 different forms. So 3 sentences for each of these, and therefore 15 sentences, which you can send me as a private message in Google Classroom. So that is your work for the weekend.